Hey guys, it's me, Ree. In this video, we're going to be looking at diagnostic imaging film, the different layers of it, and how do we develop film. So there are two main types of film, plain film, which is most common, it's cheapest, it's the old-fashioned way, and then there's digital imaging that is really expensive initially, but it's less effort once you have it. We're going to be talking from now on about plain film. So most of these is all talking about plain film, not digital film. Um, so here we have a modern film. So a modern film has a couple of different components. So it has a screen on each side. So this is a screen. So the green, pink, and black, that's a screen. Okay, so we have our screen, or rather a pink and our green is the screen. This is just the cassette cover. So here we have our screens. We have two of them on each side. That's for what's known as double emulsion. And um, the screens are what expose the film. So the electrons don't actually, or the photons coming from the electron beam don't touch the film. They touch the screen, and then the screen will light up the film. Okay. The cassette cover in the front has a low atomic number, and the back has a high atomic number. That's for backscatter purposes. So we look at the different things. So in my screen, I have a base and a phosphor. I'll talk more about that in a second. And then I have an emulsion that happens before my film. So my film has a base and an emulsion. So emulsion goes with film. Phosphor goes with screen. Let's talk a little bit about phosphor. So a phosphor is any material that emits light due to external stimulus. So an external stimulus is when that photon comes in and moves the outer shell inward and creates a photon, right? Where it comes in and that electron's like, move, we're going to change up this order, okay? So the electron beam comes in to the phosphor reacts, and then that will send or will emit light. So the phosphor emits light. Light exposes the film. Okay, an electron is not light. You don't see as you do an x-ray, there's no light that's going from the x-ray machine to it. It's once it's inside here that light is created. Now here's the thing. We can have phosphorescence versus fluorescence. So phosphorescence is not good. It's no bueno. It's where light is continually being emitted even though you are not actively changing the sequence of the electrons in the area. When I think of this, think of a glow stick. So phosphorescence is like a glow stick. Oh, excuse me, which is awesome for a rave, but not so awesome when you're trying to have a very specific exposure to a film to create an image. Excuse me. Fluorescence is what we want. So this is a term you should know. Don't get this wrong. Fluorescence is what we want. Light is only emitted when we are stimulating at that moment. So let's talk a little bit more about these layers. Onions have layers, so does film. So the base layer is a polyester. Okay, you don't, I don't think boards will ask that, but there you have it. Base layer is polyester. The phosphor, right, emits the light isotropically, so only when it is touched. It used to be that it was made of calcium tungstenate, but we do not use that. We use rare earth. So if there's a question about what film is used, rare earth is the stuff. You don't need to know what's all inside rare earth, but it's pretty rare stuff. Also within this phosphor layer, we do have a reflective layer that just increases the efficiency of the electron beam to create that light in the area. It is dyed in order to absorb photons to keep the pathway of the electron beam without any kind of blurriness, and then a protective coating. So there are some things that are added on, but main idea: rare earth phosphor layer emits light one time. Fluorescence, not phosphorescence. Then we have our film itself. The film itself, right? My film stores the information. That's what is lit up by the phosphor layer. It's film. I don't know if any of you know photography, but it's kind of a similar idea. So the um, silver halide crystals are going to be what give the coloration that we see, that black and white kind of coloration within the film picture. So that's what the emulsion does. And the base, it used to be that it was a glass base. Then they turned into cellulose nitrate, but that is super flammable. So now it is polyester. And so the base has an adhesion layer to the emulsion. The emulsion is what has silver halide crystals that will react to what the phosphor emits. We'll talk more about that in a little bit. So another term that you should just be familiar with is this Gurney-Mott hypothesis. Know that this just says that when light is emitted onto the emulsion, I have my silver and my bromide are going to want to move around, right? My Ag is silver and bromide is Br. They want to move around. That moving around of them when light is emitted is called the Frankel defect. When my silver and my bromide are moving around, a photoelectric effect occurs, and a photoelectron is captured within the tissue of that area. So the bromide and when that occurs, this bromide is going to help go into this gelatinous adhesion layer, and it will create that image. Okay. So that's the Gurney-Mott hypothesis. There's a couple different film types. You can read those yourselves. Pretty self-explanatory. I don't see any of this being on boards. I do see this term being on boards. This is where you just need to know that we're talking about the photoelectric effect associated with bromide and silver. Well, mostly bromide. Here are some ideas to just know about different films. So the speed, image, noise, and spatial resolution. So you can intensify. The slower the speed, that is the slower that it's developed or that receives the information, the less intense things are. So we have a slower speed when we have a less intense thing, higher speed with more intense. So the faster the screen, meaning the faster it works, there is more graininess. So we actually want to use slow, speeded films because then it is more detailed. So think about it. If you tell me to draw a sketch, even any of these sketches, you guys noticed in my notes for those of you who have been with me, if you tell me to draw something really quick, it looks like that. You tell me to take my time and draw something, it looks like this, okay? So we want a slower speeded film so that it has time to create a more detailed, less noisy image, noisy being that graininess. That graininess is called quantum model. The resolution, how much can you see of the area, is based on the size that you allow to transmit, the thickness of the emulsion, the layer. There's a bunch of different things. But essentially, when I increase the speed of the film, I increase the noise, but I decrease resolution in the patient dose. So that's why a fast screen is good. But if I decrease the speed, so I have a slower screen, I decrease noise. That's good. Resolution increases. That's good. But inpatient dose increases. That's not good. So this is where we have to kind of find something a little bit in the middle. And so when you look at this, for a spinal thing, I do a fast screen. For something that is slower, I could do it things that I'm a little less like, oh, we could hurt the brain, right? So I'm going to do something faster for that. This is the main idea. If you can remember just this list right here, that would help you if that is a question on boards. So characteristics, I kind of already talked to this, but the speed of the film is how sensitive is it to light? Is it super fast? Does it react fastly? Does it create the image fastly, or does it not do that? That's dependent on how many silver and bromides are within that area. Um, Contrast is the difference between black and white. So when I'm looking at an image, right, you kind of know that from editing photos on your phone, right? This is a term, this was on my boards. So I don't know if they'll put it back on boards because I just took boards 2 times ago, like 2 series of boards ago. So maybe it comes back after a couple years or after a couple of rotations of boards. But latitude is a range of exposure that is inversely proportional to contrast. So this is what latitude is. When I have a high contrast, I have a narrow latitude, and when I have a low contrast, I have a wide latitude. So explain that, Reed. So high contrast is where my black and white are easily differentiated. Okay, this is high contrast. Well, look it. This is a narrow latitude. Whereas, I did not give myself enough space. But let's say I have a less contrast. So now I have black, but I also have gray 1. I also have gray 2, and I have white. Well, as I increase the amounts of grays that I have also increased my latitude. So low contrast, where I have a bunch of different grays, wide latitude. High contrast is a narrow latitude. Okay. KVP increases my grays. So the more KVP, the more grays I have. When I look over here at this characteristic curve, what this is just showing is kind of that idea. So that at the highest latitude, the slope of this is my latitude. How many grays am I able to see? So this is the exposure rate is happening in this time. When I get to the shoulder, this is where now I can't expose anymore. The light is what the light is, and my film won't take any more messing with the atoms. So if this is a really steep exposure, it happens very quickly, then we're going to have narrow. We're going to have very high contrast. But if it takes a little bit longer, right, a gradual low, that's a wide latitude. That would be a low contrast film. Crossover is where we have light cross from one emulsion to another emulsion, and so it can create kind of a crossover effect. It adds blurriness. And then spectral sensitivity is that just what type of light is film sensitive to. So film is sensitive to blue and green light. So that's why safe lights, if you ever looked at like a film room for like photography, it's a red light that is used. So that's just a good important thing for you to know is red light is what we use for safe lights. So what do we do in that room when we take the film out of the screen? Well, we process it. So we take a latent image. The latent image is created by the bromides and the iodine that has attached to the emulsion, and we create it into a visible image. Now, this just kind of tells you this is the old one, new one. You don't need to know that for boards. So that's more for the class. If you were in the class, that this would be helpful. But let's talk a little bit about developing and some of the main ideas. So when we develop, we're going to try to turn that silver to a metallic silver. So we're turning the ions, the Ag, now to actual silver. So remember we had Ag and we had bromide. Those are those two main things that are happening in the in the film. In the latent image, right, is those two. So the first thing we do is we put it in a developer. So a developer looks right here, and it has a couple of different things in it. This is a grandiose list, okay? And for the class, you guys had to know all of these and do need to know all these. But let me just give you some of the main ones. So know that my activator, so this kind of idea, what each of these terms are, this is important. So these things in the parentheses, these are ones I would know for boards. The specific names I wouldn't necessarily worry about. So know that the developing agent is known as the reducing agent as well. That the activator controls pH and swells the gelatin. That the restrainer buffers and prevents developing underexposed. That the preservative controls oxidation, hardener controls swelling, and sequestering agent removes impurities. So basically, the activator and the hardener, right, counterbalance each other. We need the activator because it controls, it swells the gelatin so the gelatin can absorb things. But then we need to control that swelling so it doesn't take too much in. So we need the hardener. Okay, so that's like, if I had to say, like, what do you need to remember here? It's this. In that class, you need to know all these words. When we have a black developer, it's dead. It's not working. You need a new developer. So, how do I change my development? Time. So, how long is it processing in the developer? Temperature. What is the temperature? Because higher temperatures, we have more chaotic reactions. There's more, I'm not going to go, but anyway, heat increases chaos. Cold decreases chaos. So more interactions occur when we heat things up than when we turn things down. So temperature adjusts how quickly these reactions are occurring. Concentration of the developer is controlled by the operator. So the more that I put this stuff in it, the more that it kind of works out. So we first put in a developer. Okay. So it gets everything ready. Okay. But then we need to fix it. Okay, so we put in the developer, and now all of a sudden we see these we see these silvers going from ionic to metallic. But then we need to clean it. So we're going to actually put it into water, and then we're going to put it into a fixing agent. This is a clearing agent, okay? This is what makes the image permanently on that film. So this is one where I would say no. The fixing agent removes sodium bromide. That is ammonium thiosulfate. If you don't remember the whole thing, you just remember thiosulfate. That's an important thing. I don't know if they will put that on boards, but that's like one of those that I would actually remember. Again, remember what these things, like, try to memorize the things that are in the parentheses for each of these. The buffer balances the pH. The activator neutralizes the basic developer because this was very basic. So now we need an acid in order to kind of bring it back to neutral. Then we have a preservative. This is important. Stiffening, shrinking the gelatin. So what that does is it's going to stabilize the gelatin. So now we have a hard image that can't be kind of blurred. And then the sequestering agent. This is another one that is important. This is going to take out any of the aluminum ions and any of the bromide that we are like, oh boy, we don't need them anymore. They didn't create an image. Let's not leave it there so it creates extra stuff. So that's what a fixing agent is. Okay. Now, fixer retention is when we have a lack of washing. So you're going to wash in between each of them, and it can cause a yellow emulsion. So sometimes on boards, they did give me one question in this section where they gave me a defect or a processing error, an artifact, and asked me like what caused it. So if it said yellow emulsion, I'm thinking fixer retention or lack of washing. You wash with water, not with anything else. Here's another thing. So if the film comes out wet, it's probably an expired glutaraldehyde, which is in the developer. Remember that glutaraldehyde is what hardens. So this is why we have to look at the color. Because if it's down here, we don't have good glutaraldehyde. Now I have a wet film. These are a couple of artifacts. On my boards, I had crossover marks. So it was literally what artifact is seen on film that runs parallel to the field. That was to the feed. That was literally what my question was on board. So it was pretty point and shoot. So that's during processing. And that is how film works. So where's my little list? So it used to be you would wet the film, develop it, bathe the film, fix it, wash it, and then dry it. This is what I did with classic film when I did some um, film photography. But with X-rays nowadays, you do this, or you do automatic. So that is film. I see maybe one or two questions on film. So if you have a general idea of the main things herein, you can deduce pretty well when you've been around X-rays a lot in the classes that you've taken. Um, you guys will do great in this. If you have any questions, please let me know. In the next video, we're going to be looking at some, not all, but some of the basic X-ray positions that you should be aware of for boards.